Indian and Global Perspectives, Symrolic 2022. The second workshop session of the conference is on Indian philosophy in research methodology. It is my honor to introduce the resource person for today's workshop, Mr. Pranav Kumar Vashisht, an independent researcher on Dharma and the Constitution of India. Currently, Sir is a visiting faculty at Purna Pramati, a Center for Integrated Learning, Bangalore. Previously, Sir has also taught at IIT Hyderabad. He has also translated a couple of novels of Kavi Samrat Vishwanath Satyanarayan to English. And he is also an avid reader of non-fiction studies across the board in English, Telugu, Hindi, and Sanskrit as well. I welcome you, sir, to conduct the workshop.
Thank you, Akshara. Namostu Ramaya Salakshmanaya, Devyai Chitasya Janakatmajaya, Namostu Rudraendra Yamani Lebhyo, Namostu Chandraka Marukkanebhyaha. Good morning, everyone. This is a difficult exercise that I have today, specifically when I'm asked to speak about Indian philosophy and research methodology in an hour. I have tried to see what would be the best way in which this can be indeed, say, done. I have a few slides also, which I hope may be of some use, but more than the slides, my interest would be in terms of trying to give a perspective of how we can go about thinking on Indian philosophy and the corresponding research methodology that one can think of. Sharing this screen, hopefully you'll be able to see. Is my screen clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I've been asked to speak about incorporating the Indian philosophy in legal research, and I thought the best way of discussing this would be to speak about dharma, decision making, niti, and about including Shabda Brahma. I certainly elaborate on what it is, and there's a way in which one can understand this as trans-subjective injunctive plenum. Also elaborate on what each of it is and how do we think of Shabda Brahma in legal reasoning. Now, when we have to speak about Indian philosophy, I like to bring to your attention that the term philosophy is from the Greek philos and sophia, which is love of wisdom. Whereas when we refer to Indian philosophy, there are many ways in which one can understand it. There are quite a few Indian philosophers of contemporary times who have spoken of thinking in terms of what is the kind of reflections on reality that our own ancestors have tried to do. And when you look at the term, nearest term for the term philosophy in Sanskrit, then there's a broad way by which people refer to darshanas. Bharatiya darshanas are manifold, and each of them has a very wide scope in terms of what it speaks about reality. And one other aspect that we need to keep in mind is that the sense of a darshana is much more than what philosophy would be thought of as. Specifically because we learn from Plato that a philosopher is always in quest of wisdom, and we also learn that sages are wise, and we are told that most of our darshanas, they are visions of reality seen by the seers, and these seers are rishis, and if by some means we actually think of rishis as sages, then the sense of what a darshana contains is already wisdom. There is nothing that we are being in quest of that wisdom. This might as well be, say, a pedantic at times, but I do want to make this clear. And when we speak in terms of darshanas, there are at least 16 of them that we notice which are listed in this text written by Sayana Madhava in the 14th century of Common Era. They are given these names: Charvaka, Bauddha, Arhata, Ramanuja Darshana, Purna Pragya Darshana, Nakulisha Pashupada Darshana, Shaiva Darshana, Pratyabhijna Darshana, Raseshwara Darshana, Vaiseshika Darshana, Akshapada Darshana, Jaiminiya Darshana, Paniniya Darshana, Sankhya Darshana, Patanjali Yoga Darshana, and Shankara Darshana. Shankara Darshana is more popular as Advaita. Ramanuja Darshana is Visishta Advaita. Purna Pragya is Dvaita. These three are Vedanta Darshanas. Now, there is a pattern by which we speak about these varieties of visions of reality, and in some sense, the nature of the distinctions between each of these, specifically if you look at Charvaka and Bauddha, the introduction is done based on what are the kind of grounds of what is understood as valid knowledge that each of the proponents of Charvaka Bauddha accept. That is true of all the 16 various darshanas. So Charvaka is somebody who categorically states that he believes only in that which he sees. So there is only the sense perception that is specifically stated as the acceptable darshana to a Charvaka. A Bauddha counters a Charvaka, saying that the presence of sense perception alone isn't sufficient even for our day-to-day activities that we do. There is a necessary requirement of accepting inference or anumana pramana, which is, and these two pramanas are acceptable to all the various darshanas that we have. And more importantly, there are distinctions in terms of what we understand as perception. Specifically, the sense perception differs for Bauddha with that of an Akshapada Darshana. Akshapada Darshana is also popularly known as Nyaya Darshana, because Nyaya is propounded, the sutras of Nyaya have been propounded by Akshapada Gautama. Now, while say these darshanas and their references keep coming to us repeatedly, we'll have to think in terms of what type of approach can students of law take in terms of a research methodology. So I have a slide on the sense of the research methodology that one can possibly think of. If research methodology were primarily to be understood as a quest for reliable, actionable knowledge. So, many of you may have participated in the previous workshop in this seminar, which was on the Q methodology. And there was a very specific reference that was given about how do we understand the subjectivity of the human beings, and in what manner can you structure the nature of variety of problems that we have, which would ensure that we can have a way by which subjectivity be understood, and at the same time see ways and means by which you can think of actionable means of picking knowledge from various subjective sources. So this is a point which I felt if it is pointed out from the standpoint of Indian philosophy, how would that turn out to be as a ground for this workshop? I certainly gave a certain direction to it, and when we refer to the sense of subjective and objective, these two are formulations which have great degree of discussion that has happened across the world. Whereas if we look at, say, the sense of what is objective, there are people who might also point out that even that has something subjective about it. And I'll also show the grounds based on which such a kind of a formulation can come about. If we were to mean research is about some deep study or a study undertaken to unearth hitherto unknown things. In terms of a legal research, one of the key kind of considerations that one might want to know is in terms of what is legal, what is illegal, and what is non-legal. There is a way by which one can think of how reality operates. So not everything that is illegal is necessarily say to be capturing all that is not legal. So we have certain spaces which go beyond say legality, and that space which goes beyond say legality and illegality is a space for the things which are currently non-legal, because generally speaking, we have this reference from Sir Henry Maine, who has pointed out that the way in which law itself develops is by way of harmonizing what is the written law with that of what happens in society by three means, whether it be by way of a legislation or by way of a legal fiction or by way of equity. Now, this concern about, say, law to be something that is necessarily relevant and something that people in the world also accept is a very important part, specifically because all legal systems are necessarily normative in their very nature. We'll come to this in a while, but if we were to talk about reliable knowledge, the question of reliable knowledge in current times to a large extent has meant that many of the kind of points which are considered as knowledge as a part of Bharatiya Darshanas, they in modern times do not seem to be finding a space under the scope of what we call as reliable knowledge. And this is a matter of fact as on today. And that is more so because the sense of what we understand as reliability and the beliefs that are associated with reliability have underwent drastic change over time. And it is in that light that if we were to start looking at the sense of reliability in the light of Bharatiya Darshanas, that is something that can be obtained only by certain means of valid knowledge, which we call as pramanas. And the field of epistemology is used as an English connotation, a word to mean pramana shastra that is obtained in our various darshanas. Now, the sense of this reliability and the sense of the pramana, these words themselves have underwent drastic changes, specifically in modern times. More so when you look at the predominant sense in which scientific knowledge is treated as reliable knowledge. And many of you, since you are part of the legal discipline, the way in which law developed into a discipline was by trying to emulate the manner by which physics became a separate discipline of study. And it is in this mode that if one looks at a brief history, you would notice that the sense by which law became a discipline is by trying to create an autonomous sphere within which one can operate in terms of all knowledge that can be called as legal knowledge. And it is here that the sense of the development of common law tradition, and also if one can actually exhaust all possibilities that are experienced in real life, if one can actually get that entire scope covered and captured as part of courts or case laws, then one does not require to seek anything else other than what is already encoded or that which is part of the varieties of case law, is a point by which, say, the legal discipline was attempted to be created. And more so, once, say, this happened, and this has got a lot to do with a certain type of understanding that knowledge is necessarily, say, quote unquote, positivist, which is primarily to mean that the sense of what we assert is something that can indeed be logically shown. And these senses of the nature of logical senses, as well as the ways and means by which people have referred to rationality, they themselves have underwent drastic changes over the past 30-40 years. So we have, say, certain works which try to ask whose justice, which rationality, and this is solely coming from the Western tradition. So in such light, we are better placed today, possibly because of the kind of discontentment with the sense of what is the way in which reality is operating and how law is able to capture it, or let's say by way of trying to ensure that nature of reality is bound within the laws. This exercise is something that has posed several questions, and none more so than the kind of changes or the disruptions that the world of internet has brought to the fore. So in such a sense, it indeed is meaningful to ask whether if we trace back to the original senses of what is to be considered as reliable, that is obtained from tradition and various traditions that are existent specifically within India, can we build on those and have some appropriate ways and means by which we can ask the question of what is the way by which you can have a law which can be binding on people. And that sense of binding calls for the appropriate creation of the norms as well. So we'll see, say, whether such a possibility can be thought of, which necessarily asks the question, what is law and what ought to be law? Now, since reliable knowledge is what we are looking at, and the sense of this reliable knowledge is currently in this context referred to as that which Pramanas give, what can be known? And this question also has been asked. And when you ask a question of knowledge about what, the response has been yathartha, or the sense of the reality itself. Within the 16 darshanas that I have actually pointed out to you, there are some darshanas which have actually stated that reality is non-existent. Specifically, if you look at Bauddha Darshana, it doesn't accept the presence of anything called reality. And there are others which actually speak in terms of reality as illusory. And there are some darshanas which have specifically stated that there exists reality. And further, they also point out that that which we call as reality is something that can be described accurately in language. That is to say that there exists a way by which everything that is in reality can indeed be captured in language. So this, the sets of darshanas which fall under this thought process are the ones which are actually, say, useful to us, specifically because even those that actually consider that reality is illusory or reality is that which needs to be considered as non-existent, when it comes to, say, the manner in which you deal with the manner in which things have to transact, in such instances, they treat as if it were to be existent and correspondingly, say, deal with things. So in the manner in which they deal with things, they have their own logic, their own rationale in which it is done. So in the Bauddha Darshana, there's a specific way by which people speak in terms of karma santati, or a sequence of various karmas which are all brought together. So now the term which is capturing the sense of the ways and means by which one can study reality is popularly known as ontology. And we use as a say ontology for a word which speaks in terms of Prameya Shastra. So Prameya Shastra, Pramana Shastra and Prameya Shastra are the technical terms from Samskrita which we are using in order to capture the senses of say in English language, we are using epistemology and ontology. There's indeed a distinction between what is Pramana Shastra and Prameya Shastra as opposed to epistemology and ontology, because episteme is specifically referring to knowledge. But if one looks at the Greek thought itself, we notice that the nature by which what we can understand as jnana, yathartha jnana, it is of it's something that cannot be captured solely by episteme. So there is a word term that Aristotle used called phronesis, which is to do with practical reasoning, in the sense that if you go to a market, you might find a fruit vendor who is able to stack up all his oranges in a manner in which it is very tightly packed, as well as it's something that is optimal in terms of its space that it occupies. But if you go and ask the person if he can show by way of mathematical proof that the manner in which he has arranged it is indeed the optimal way in which he can do so, then the fruit vendor may not be in a position to do so. But he has the practical ways and means by which he can arrange it. Now, a mathematician who is able to show that the manner in which this the fruit vendor has been able to arrange these fruits is indeed, say, the optimal way in which you can arrange them, he may not be able to do so. So there is a practical way in which you can act on it and also ensure. So this knowledge is not part of episteme. So in the sense of Pramana Shastra, such a kind of formulation isn't something that we restricted. So there is that distinction that is existent. But before we get into these distinctions about epistemology is different from Pramana Shastra or ontology is different from Prameya Shastra, there is a even more significant kind of point of, let's say, a break from the earlier existent past that happened when there was a conscious way by which epistemology and ontology were separated. This is to be seen in the work of Immanuel Kant, popularly known as the father of modern philosophy, where the consideration for Kant has been that whatever was the old ontologies that were provided by Aristotle and so on, they were to be rejected. And if any, it is the epistemology that actually has to convey what exactly is to be considered as ontology. Or rather, say it is through the epistemological means that you actually understand and find out what reality is. That is to say, there isn't a point of talking about reality as being separate from, say, the manner in which we refer to the reality and talk about reality in language and the way in which we express it. But we are specifically referring to the way in which we express itself as capturing reality. So reality is that which the epistemology is sanctioning. So this sense is something which is very important in our current times also, where we have several new categories of quote unquote reality. And this, when I use this term reality, it is not used in the yathartha jnana sense. For example, say in the classical understanding of the world, the senses of how many genders existed, people would refer to 3 of them. But today you might as well give many more numbers than, say, the 3. And further, the third also is something that is explained in terms of the two, male and female. Today, this sense of ontological understanding is, say, for a variety of reasons, it has been, say, replaced, or rather being, there's a conscious effort to try and replace it, and that too with a certain kind of a desire for what ought to be considered as just. So there is a conscious effort that many of you are aware of. So, and this possibility of the sense by which one can speak about what knowledge is, and also train in a manner in which you alter the nature of how people understand the reality, and that itself shaping reality, is something that can be traced possibly to the separation of ontology and epistemology. So that's a very major significant change, and the knowledge of this indeed is something that can enable us when we start looking at understanding the world, because in terms of any type of research methodology, to be able to understand what the other is saying or what is happening in reality, and how one is actually, say, in relation to reality, understanding it, it is important to recognize that these kind of changes have happened. And it is in that context that if you have some people who are hard wired into whatever is the sense of their ontological beliefs that they have, those ontological beliefs would necessarily mean that the kind of conflict that one has with the proposed ontological frameworks, which are actually being pointed out as ways and means by which we can think of a better future, this becomes a point of contestation. And there are indeed, say, contentious beliefs, and how does one resolve them becomes a very active and important part of how one can think of what would be creative approaches to understanding and also extending the nature of knowledge that we currently have. Now, apart from the quest for reliable knowledge, I also mentioned actionable knowledge. And this is very important, specifically in the context of the term dharma, because one of the key things that we learn from Indian tradition is that there is this injunction that says dharmam chara. So if at all there is, and there is also a very famous shloka, which I think it is appropriate to mention here. It says that insofar as one's own quest for wealth and education is concerned, you might as well consider yourself to be immortal, and in that manner think about it. Whereas when it comes to dharma, and the shloka pada goes something like it, it says grihita iva keseshu mrityuna dharma macharet. As if, say, you are held by the your hairs are held by death, perform dharma. So whenever somebody says this is dharma, then it is something which is meant to be acted upon. So how is it that one specifies what dharma is? We have a very specific kind of formulation in Sanskrit language. If you look at the types of sentences that are there, there is a specific type of sentence called with a link. Link is a specific grammatical form which has been extensively discussed, that you would notice. And this, the senses, the nature of sentences in language which capture commands, those commands are, by the very manner in which they are actually worded, they are the ones which impel one to act. So the sense of a vidhi vakya, the sentences that are actually meant to capture commands, are very important in terms of understanding that here is something that indeed one must act on. And when it comes to law, the desire of any lawmaker, or for that matter, the way in which we would like, say, a people to live, because law is meant to be something that is going to create a world which is going to be the best possible world that one can possibly work towards. In such a situation, if somebody says this is law, we expect people to as well comply with it. And this compliance with laws is an important aspect that is desired. So what is it that ought to be the content of law, which makes one have this an impelling force in it that makes one to act? That has been a major kind of point for discussion in Bharatiya Darsanas, and that's something that is the place where we have to place the question of Shabda Prama. Now, having given, say, this broad view, I'd certainly like to go a step further in terms of capturing the sense of how we can look at the nature of our own, the sense of how people have looked at Indian thought and Indian logic. So this is a note from a text on the structure of the world in Udayana's realism. Udayana is a Nayayika, who's also somebody who has brought Nyaya Vaiseshika together, and he is seen as the one whose work has laid the foundation for what is known as Navya Nyaya later. And here is a note which I felt is important to bring to your attention. Says that one of the main reasons why scholars have often said that Indian logic is intentional seems to be the fact that Indians describe the structure of the world in terms of the Dharma-Dharmi relation. So Dharma-Dharmi Sambandha, which is one of the commonest thinking patterns in Indian logic. The thinking pattern of the Dharma-Dharmi relation allowed Indian philosophers to describe the structure of the world by intention rather than by extension. So the in terms of varieties of logics that we have in modern times, we have also seen the development of intentional and extensional logics. And when we refer to intentional logic, you are referring to, so in a sentence, the nature of what is contained in terms of the content, what is captured within the sentence is what specifically would deal with the intention. And one way in which one can possibly understand it is by looking at this formulation that the entire cosmos can actually be seen as mapped onto human body. And this is a certain type of an imagination that one finds across the various texts of texts in the Indian tradition. So whereas, say, when you refer to extension, then you would have to enumerate that if suppose there's a word, then what all it captures are enumerated. Instead of that, the intention would actually capture it from within it itself. So this sense of Dharma-Dharma relation, Dharma-Dharmi Sambandha, is something that is an important one, which also gives us a sense by which we can start thinking in terms of how human beings could be understood. So now we have several senses by which we have captured man. You heard about Homo sapiens, and latestly there is also the talk about we have Homo faber. We have varieties of references of how we understand man to be. And one of the very fundamental kind of a statement that most of us would have studied in our school would be man is a social animal. Now, the very formulation of man as a social animal or a man as a political being, zoon politikon, each of these are such kind of propositional statements which have been elaborated on, and there's an analytic framework built around it which has given us several theories of understanding reality. In such a sense, most of these formulations, they don't capture the way in which reality is understood in Bharatiya Darsanas. And man as Dharmadharaka is a very important formulation that one can think of. And when this Dharma-Dharmin relation comes about, and this is something that can be simplified by saying, supposing that, say, there's a recently married couple. So the moment, say, they are married, and let's say this marriage is heterogeneous marriage, then correspondingly we have this clear understanding that the man has acquired a certain type of dharma that is actually meant for a husband, and this is something that you would draw from, say, the nature of the tradition that one is part of, and correspondingly the wife has acquired, say, the dharmas of a wife. So in terms of the way in which these dharmas have now come to sit in this locus called dharmin have happened because of a particular act, and that is the act of marriage. So the nature of dharma-dharmin relations, it can possibly be stated that there are number of dharmas which are actually present, which are all hanging in the air, which are possibly present in the world, and these dharmas look for appropriate kind of loci where they can come and reside. Now, one can possibly start looking at, say, the figure of Mahatma Gandhi. Now, before, say, Mahatma Gandhi was indeed called Mahatma, or the Bapu, or father of the nation, the sense in which Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi would have probably thought of his own kind of world may possibly be limited. But the moment from which, say, he would start imagining that any kind of a riot that happens in the country is something that has that causes him pain in his own body, this kind of a mapping is something that alters the sense of how he looks at himself, and correspondingly the nature of dharmas that come and dwell in the dharmi, which is now the body of Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi. So in this way, one can possibly look at the entire world in terms of varieties of dharmas which are actually waiting to be coming on and residing in appropriate dharmis. So what you do find that the Indian culture point out is that one must start trying to transform oneself in such a manner that all the dharmas which are actually, say, virtuous, they come and sit within within the person. So such a kind of a formulation is something that is desired, and you would also notice that varieties of things which are called as duties that are actually mentioned for different, say, stations of life. For example, for a brahmachari, a brahmachari is expected to perform, say, several kind of activities, and when he starts performing those, the corresponding dharmas which are actually meant to be followed by brahmachari are coming to reside in him. He is not, of course, say, those dharmas don't well, and he cannot possibly be called as following what is brahmacharya ashrama. This formulation of dharma-dharmi relation is something that opens up a great scope in itself to understand reality, and the senses by which man can be understood, and what are the ways and means by which we can talk about the changes that happen in the world, the way in which we speak about the world, they all can drastically alter with the way in which we start understanding as to what is the nature of man. So there's a formulation that one can also get from Yaska's Nirukta, where he asks a question, Manushyaha Kasmat. The response is Matva Karmani Sidyanti. And this is one of the 5 various kinds of ways in which he points out. And Manushyaha, at a later point, you would also speak about them as Manorapadyaha. That is, these are the children of Manu, the first progenitor. So of the 5, the first one is Matva Karmani Sidyanti. Wherefore the term Manushya come from. So because man is a suturing being. Man is somebody who sews, that is, stitches their actions post mentation. So this is a widely variant formulation from what one can possibly look at in terms of the normal ways in which we can speak of man. And this sense of mentation offers a great scope for looking at deeper in terms of how we can speak in terms of knowledge also. because at some point in the European Enlightenment, we have come across the way by which mind and body have been separated, and this the understanding of what is reality and the senses by which one can talk about reality. When you start speaking in terms of saying that all kinds of actions in matter, they can actually be traced to changes in matter itself. So this formulation is something that completely leaves mind aside. Now, it may not be inappropriate also to point out that when Isaac Newton was specifically attempting to try and speak in terms of these laws of motion, his interest was about how do we start thinking about what makes a man move from point A to point B. It's a different story that this question was not something that he was able to answer, but certainly he was able to answer the question of how physical bodies, when applied to the force, where does this force come from is a question. And this is where, say, we later learn that there is this sense of force that is brought in by an agent, and that agent, we notice that Leibniz has spoken of it as conatus, which is a sense of what in say Sanskrita we should call it as prayatna or a pravritti. So and the formulation in which Leibniz is asked is also very fascinating, because Leibniz as a juror was interested in coming up with a scientific scope for law, and the manner in which he has spoken of this specific sense was that when he came up with integration, integral a to b fx dx, if that is the nature of the way in which we express, the function is fx and it needs to be integrated, but the limits in which, say, it needs to be integrated, a and b, where do they come from? And that's a question where he mentioned that it is the man who has the role to actually give that, and that is the point from where the Leibnizian thinking in terms of the modern law formulations have also unfolded. So there is a great sense by which these discussions which have happened, they create a ground for us to start looking at the question of law itself. And let me also point out to another term that we have in Sanskrita called naraha. It says nirnanti nayanti sarvam swavashamiti naraha. That is, those who bring everything under their control. Now, this sense of naraha and manushyaha. So, how does manushya transform to naraha? This is a point where one can possibly place the terms that we are very popularly using in terms of the sense of the citizenship as that which has to constitute naratva, or the sense of being a nara, which is that they can bring everything under their control. And manushya is to transform to a citizen. So there's this sense that by which one can possibly open up the scope of what is something that is possible. And this is something that can also bring in many of those kind of areas which have been considered as beyond the scope of modern reliable knowledge, be brought within the scope of reliable the sense of reliability could possibly be extended. And how does that happen is what we are concerned with, because say all the various approaches of trying to speak in terms of subjectivity and how do we include subjectivity is a concern that arises out of the sense of what is considered as reliable knowledge as something that has completely set the sense of the subjective scope for varieties of knowledge that exists. That is something that is beyond the scope of discussion. So how do we bring that back in is a very key concern. And for that, we need to possibly start asking a few other questions. So now, the theme that I felt that I should pick was Dharma, decision making, and Niti. Now, decision making is something that every judge is expected to take up, and every one of us always are faced with a question and a requirement to make a decision, because unless and until one makes that decision, there is not a possibility of going ahead and acting on it. So since decisions are exceptionally important, and what will be the ground for making such decisions is a very important point. And naturally, one might as well ask, is there a possible way in which you can have a biasless and boundless ground for decision making? And it turns out that from the Indian tradition, there is a very strong kind of a response, and that is in terms of the conditions that actually capture what would be the kind of a ground which would give us a biasless and a boundless ground. And these are conditions which are described as apaurusheyatva and anaditva. You refer to apaurusheyatva, it is a reference to what is considered as authorless reference. So if you have a sentence which is authorless, then such a thing is something which is considered as exceptionally important, because since every author is necessarily bound to have the authorial bias, if you have something which is authorless, it's formally stated that it is biasless. And there is also this reference to anaditva, that is the beginninglessness. And generally, there is a certain type of formulation. This is a particular nyaya that says anything that is born or anything that has a beginning indeed has an end. Now, this formulation is something that is verified and accepted by many in terms of their own appreciation of reality. And in such a formulation, if we take the beginninglessness also to constitute endlessness, then it is something that becomes eternal. So it that way becomes a boundless ground also, which is boundless in time. And these two conditions, apaurusheyatva and anaditva conditions, these are specifically referred to in the context of the definition of what is Veda. And Shabda Pramana, in terms of the discussions that we have in most of the realist, say, schools of the darshanas, we clearly state that Shabda Pramana is a reference to a verbal testimony that comes from somebody who is reliable, and Veda, because of its biaslessness, is necessarily to be treated as something which is ground that one can accept for all types of decision making. And when we have the term dharma, which is actually pointed out as rooted in Veda, Vedo Kilo Dharma Mula. This is the very famous statement that we get here. So this sense of dharma is something that is again rooted in Veda. And what is Veda? That's a question that also is addressed. Veda as that which is the collection of various kinds of Vithi-nishedha vakyas. So that is those which are the injunctions that actually say to do or not to do, that are actually present. All such collections which are stated to be authorless, beginningless, they are the ones that capture, say, the ones that give you what dharma is. And in this sense, the term dharma is something that does not speak of a sense of action, which actually is going to give you a specific kind of result or a consequence that one can necessarily find in one's own lifetime. But it is actually to be noticed in what is called as the paraloka. So we have this understanding in terms of how we capture reality as having this world and the other world. Many people in the religious domain refer to the other world to be meaning heaven, hell, etc. But one need not possibly say be bound by notions of heaven or hell. But insofar as, say, the modern day understanding of paraloka is concerned, one can actually see that Paraloka exists in all such instances where if one is actually absent from, say, one's vision. So in the absence of a person, if one is to recall about a person, what is it that comes to one's mind? And this thing which comes to one's mind is what captures the sense of the Paraloka. Is a formulation which is a fascinating and very strongly rooted formulation for which one can also find grounds in Indian tradition. So in that sense, one can possibly start asking, and specifically this is a conference which is talking about climate change and also the nature of sustainable development. So what would be that kind of a thing which when done, people in the absence of the person who has done think good about such a person. So if you have a situation where 200 years down the line, somebody is stating that here was some act which was done, which resulted in a change, and that is actually praised 200 years down the line. So such a necessary thing means that you can possibly say that this recollection which is happening because what was done at that time, and the recollection which is positively done is happening because of the nature of what is actually occurred is what was done is dharma. Here, the contrast with niti is also important. Now, niti, when it is not actually the same as dharma, it is meant to be a strategy by which one can actually conduct one's own life to achieve one's goals. And those goals could be something which is to deal with all the nature of deeds that one has in mind, all kinds of purposive actions. So for every kind of a purposive action, every kind of a karma that one does, the karma is possible because there is some kind of a desire that actually is generated out of a certain type of a knowledge. And once this desire grows into sufficient strength, it is then that one would actually end up, say, looking at the question of translating it to action. So under normal circumstances, dharma and niti ought to be the same. But in current times and contemporary times, more often than not, dharma and niti are separated. And that nature of this decision making has come about more so because the sense of this paurushayatva and anaditva conditions are not things that we are ready to as well say accept. And why would that come is also a question that we need to start looking at. So when we refer to Shabda Pramana, is one of the, if you look at the Nayayikas Nyaya Darshana, which is also primarily referred to as the Pramana Shastra, it has specified 4 different pramanas as distinct and also something that categorically state that the knowledge that each of these pramanas provides is something that cannot be obtained from the other pramana. That is to say, when you have, and the 4 pramanas that are listed are Pratyaksha, Anumana, Upamana, and Shabda. Pratyaksha is sense perception. That which is obtained from our senses cannot be inferred, cannot be obtained by analogy, which is Upamana, and cannot be obtained from language, because there is some kind of a perception. So the nature of taste, if you say that mango is tasty, that's something that is only experienced, that is experienced by your tongue, and that is how you grasp that particular knowledge. So similarly, there are references. The inference, the process of inference is something that is going to give you that type of knowledge. The most stock example that is repeatedly used and also extensively elaborated on is that of the ability to locate or necessarily assert the presence of fire on noticing smoke. So this is because you are able to say there's an assertion possible that wherever there is smoke, there is fire, but the vice versa is not true. And that's something that we notice in the case of a red hot iron rod. And such a formulation is something that and when does, say, the sense of these smoke come about, and what are the kind of conditions under which the smoke comes, and what are the so there's a reference to the presence of which would not ensure that the inference is possible. So these are all kinds of questions which have been discussed extensively in the Pramana Shastra. Now, Upamana is again a point where we notice it's offering something which is peculiarly distinct kind of formulation as opposed to the other Pramanas. That's what is the argument that Navya Nayayikas make. And when it comes to Shabda, it is certainly different from the perception of sound. The fact that you are listening to the various sounds that I am actually stating is not the reason why you are comprehending the kind of sentences that I am trying to articulate. And it is not something that can also be obtained from inference, because say when I am actually stating a sentence, we are noticing certain type of formulations which are present within the sentence, and the meanings of the words are present. These are being connoted in one's mind, and each of these that are existent, they are coming together to give us some meaning. If one were to say that we are inferring it from these by putting all these these varieties of things together, which is what, of course, say there's a specific argument that people from Bauddha and Vaiseshika give, that which is called as Shabda, it is not something which is to be considered as a Pramana, is one formulation, but even if it is considered as Pramana, is something that can be obtained from inference itself. That is, a person who has the memory of the meanings of various words, he is able to hear the sounds that are generated, and there is a specific process by which, say, the varieties of the meanings of the terms that are actually obtained, those are being brought together, and correspondingly, say, one is making sense of the whole meaning of the sentence. So you can infer it is a formulation that is also suggested. But please notice that this leads to certain fundamental problems, in the sense that supposing that a person knows that there is another person who has inferred wrongly about what is existent in reality. That is to say, suppose you have a case where a rope is thought of as a snake. Now, we have two people here. Let's say the person who actually points out to a rope and says that the rope is actually a snake and correspondingly acts like that. This person is saying something, saying that place there's a snake there, and what he is actually showing is a rope. And suppose the other person who is listening to this person, if he is formulating this specific instance of the other person's understanding being, or his belief being, that rope is snake, is what is making him act in a certain manner. With this knowledge which he has inferred, would he be acting in the same manner as, say, the other person? Because here he has made a distinction between the knowledge of the rope as snake as different from the knowledge of the other person believing that the rope is something that is thought of as snake. So this particular distinction is pointed out as a final kind of an argument that Gangesh Upadhyaya gives, in terms of pointing out that the claim that we can possibly subsume the kind of knowledge that one gains from Shabda Pramana can be brought out of inferential awareness. It cannot be so, because the nature of actions that actually are expected from a person who has an erroneous cognition and is actually, say, stating that aloud, and a person who infers that the other person has wrongly inferred also to act in the same manner. These two do not actually sit well. So therefore, Shabda Pramana necessarily ought to be a separate kind of a Pramana, is what is indeed, say, identified. Now, if that is once seen, say, in current times, more often than not, we do not see that this sense of Shabda Pramana is going to find its place in court proceedings. I'll give you a few examples also. But before that, if one were to start talking about the ways and means by which Shabda Pramana can be understood, it's primarily the verbal knowledge, and there's a sentential understanding. And to obtain the sentential understanding, first and foremost, we expect that the persons involved, one who is listening, one who is uttering, they have awareness of words. This is a presupposition. And there's a common understanding of language. Then there is awareness of what is called as sin categorematicity, which is in Sanskrita called as akanksha jnana. When you say categorematicity, what you mean is that you can have a particular word which can stand independent of other words. But if you say that there is a sin categorematicity, what we mean is that a particular word is expecting something else. So, for example, if I were to say Rama killed, naturally the question would be who? Who is it that Rama killed? So, this is a question which is the akanksha jnana. So, if you say that the moment say that particular word kill is actually used, then you have to say someone killing somebody else. So both are actually expected by that word itself. So this is the akanksha, and you do find that there are varieties of akanksas that one can actually notice in language. And more so when you notice that, in fact, it is possibly meaningful to also point out that there is some of the things which are probably naturally understood in Indian languages may not be easily understood in English. So because the structure and the sentence formation is different in English as opposed to Sanskrita or the other Indian languages. So for example, I'd like to take the same example in English and in Hindi. So if you say Rama killed Ravana, the reference, the corresponding sentence in Hindi would be Ram ne Ravan ko mara. So in Rama killed, the moment say you use the term killed, because the object on which the verb is acting, that is something that is coming later, because you have subject verb object formulation in English, whereas in Hindi or majority of Indian languages that actually draw from the Sanskrit grammatical approach, you would find that Ram ne Ravan ko. So ne and ko, these are actually binding Ravana, the word Ravana, which is the referent to the real Ravana who is being killed by Rama. So this formulation itself is actually binding, and the sense by which we refer to these sentences, that offers us a specific understanding of what is it that we expect. Ram ne Ravan ko, if you suppose leave it there. Kya kiya, what did he do? So similarly, that is the sense of akanksha. Now, similarly, the verbal knowledge also expects a syntactic proximity called asatti jnana. You can say the point is also about sannidhi. So now, if at all you have, say, Ravan ko is not how it is, say, and the term ko is not used, something else is used. Suppose you are actually having a sentence, Rama killed, Ravana is present. So if you have the sense of Rama killed, after that, if you use something which is not necessarily going to be a point which can be killed, then such a kind of a thing would not mean that there is a syntactic proximity. So suppose you say, in reference to say something that cannot be killed. So Rama killed Devata. Devatas are immortal. So such a kind of a statement is something that doesn't give you a meaningful kind of an expression in language. And that is also the case when you start looking at the kind of points when one refers to the son of a barren woman. So by virtue of stating someone is a barren woman, you are actually having a certain meaning which is used, which necessarily is not to be considered in this particular kind of formulation. So the sense of this sanithya of these two isn't something that can be accepted. Similarly, there is awareness of semantic compatibility and also, so this yogyata jnana, so the barren woman example is more suitable for the semantic compatibility. And further, we also have the sense of the pragmatic relevance, or what is it that the person is intending to communicate. All these are matters which are all presupposed in the manner in which we can start speaking about the sentential understanding, which is providing a distinctive understanding of what can be known about reality. So there is also a reference to this Tatparya Jnana here. Now, when you refer to Tatparya, Tatparya is a very huge area in terms of how it is actually referred to in terms of our whole study in the world. So, in fact, if one looks at the senses of Tatparya used, how do you know a Tatparya for text? Supposing that, say, you have the text of Ramayana in front of you. How do you know what is it that Valmiki, who's written the Sanskrit Ramayana, how did he actually, what is it that he intended to convey to you? Now, there are, say, Mimamsa Tatparya Nirnaya Lingas. 6 of them have been identified. And the way and means by which you can actually grasp what is the utterance of the speaker of this kavya in this instance. It has been pointed out by referring to, there's a specific sense by which it is added. You are actually pointing out that Upakrama, Upasamhara. These are two terms which are actually referring to how does a kavya begin and how does it end. Now, what is stated in the beginning and what is stated in the end, both these are supposed to be something which are incompatibility with one another. If it is not, then there is something of a problem, which means that it is not a worthy text to be read. So whenever there is something which is of a worthy text, or when you consider that somebody's words need to be given some kind of an attention, then the way in which one begins and the way in which one ends, both of them indeed must have some sense of, say, reference to the same kind of a meaning. Upakrama, Upasamhara is the first type of a linga. Then there is a reference of abhyasa, which is to say that if a person is intending to convey a particular point, then that person is going to repeat what he is wanting to convey again and again, many times over, in the course of what he is trying to point out. So this is the second of the lingas. Then we have the reference to the specific point about apurvata. So we say that if at all what a person is stating, there is nothing new about what the person is actually stating, something which has already been obtained, then such a kind of a thing, why should it have another separate existence? Unless and until there is something which has been conveyed, which has not been obtained prior to the particular kind of a statement that is heard. This apurvata is a very significant aspect. If you are actually repeating what is already stated in the same manner, so there may be instances where one might actually repeat what has already been stated, but in a novel manner. And that kind of a novel manner is what you definitely find in across, say, the traditions which are say necessarily, say, having the spirit of ekavakyata, particular condition, which is very important in terms of the way in which one can think in terms of Indian methodology of understanding texts or even life, because there is a sense by which we speak of all points which are found in Vaidika Vangmaya have an ekavakyata. That is, you can actually, despite whatever are the apparent means and ways and means by which one can talk about distinctions and differences that one can notice in various texts, they are supposed to be conveying the same kind of a single sentenceness. That is, if you summarize it, they do not have any kind of a distinction that they are conveying. Now, this is a certain hermeneutic approach, an interpretative method, whereby you would notice extensive kind of work was done, and the varieties of ways in which it is done, that itself is the creativity of the great analytic traditions that we have in Mimamsa or Nyaya that we notice. So once we have the apurvata as a condition, there is also this sense of arthavada, and that is somebody is necessarily told, do this because this is going to give you some good phala. So arthavada contains all such statements which are made in such a manner that they encourage you to actually read the text or say listen to something. So in Valmiki Ramayana, you will also find certain types which would be stated as phalasruti. So if you do this, then this is the kind of phala that comes, so therefore you do this. So you read this text because it is actually giving you this. And once we refer to this, there's also the sense of what is it that you are actually getting as a fruit. So phala, apurvata, and the sense of arthavada. And finally, we ended with the sense of upapatti, which is where, say, there is a rational kind of understanding between the varieties of statements that are made. How does one read one with respect to other? What is the kind of way by which one can put all such varying kind of thoughts together? Such a kind of a formulation is mentioned as upapatti, that gives the tatpariyana. Now, these are all expected to be present or presuppositions in the understanding of the sentential meaning.
Sir,
yes.
Can I just interrupt you? We are running a little short of time, so
I wrap up in a single couple of minutes. Is that okay?
Thank you, sir.
Sure. So the key point that I wanted to bring to your attention is the sense of the discussion of the vithi or a fiat. We have varieties of fiats that are actually discussed, and most of modern laws are fiats. What is the way by which one can think of making a fiat as a matter which would ensure that people also feel that they have an impelling force that makes them comply with it? That is a question that is important, and that is where the question of dharma also comes to the fore. So when you speak about dharma, it is that which is because it is desirable and it is conducive to highest good, and it is indicated or taught by a appropriate vithi. And this vithi is from the Anadi Apaurushaya Samhita of such kind of injunctions. Now, the Anadi Apaurushaya vithi can also possibly be understood as trans-subjective ab initio fiats. And this is where, say, the formulation of the nature of fiats and the manner in which one can possibly capture the sense of these laws, which people feel naturally, normatively comply with them, comes about. There's a whole scope of this which has been discussed in the works of Professor Chhatrapati Singh, who tried to bring in a critique of Kant and Leibniz and tried to bring in Nyaya in his formulation of the law from anarchy to utopia, where he discussed these points specifically in the light of Kant's quest for a synthetic a priori as the ground for what a law could be. He mentioned that, say, the legal propositions or basic legal propositions are meant to be synthetic a priori, diri necessary conditions, propositions, and these are formulations which align with that of the nature of thinking that one finds in Mimamsakas and Nayayikas. This is what is a ground from where one can possibly pick and move further, is a point that I want to bring to your attention. Not too sure if I've made much sense, but I do hope that if there are any questions, I'd be glad to see if I can elaborate on.
Thank you very much, sir, for your valuable inputs. It was indeed insightful to learn about the connotations of dharma and quest of wisdom in research, as well as the influence of knowledge and language in Indian understanding of research methodology. Thank you very much for the same. I request everyone to not leave the meeting, as the valedictory session will be held in a very short while. Thank you so much, sir.
Sir, am I visible and clearly audible?
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Just a second. Has ma'am joined? Can we start? Just a second, search.
Yes, Marianka, ma'am has joined.
Okay, okay. A very good afternoon to you, ma'am. Honorable Director, ma'am, a very good afternoon. Can we start with the valedictory session?
Ma'am, you are on mute.
I may leave when I'm called. I may not have more than 20 minutes time.
Okay,
Okay.
ma'am, with your due permission, can we start, ma'am?
Yes, you can.
Okay, okay. Good afternoon, one and all present here. I welcome all of you to the valedictory ceremony of Symrolic 2022, the virtual 10th International Annual Research Conference on Rule of Law in Context, Climate Change and Sustainable Development, Indian and Global Perspectives, with special focus on legal system and stakeholder behavior, environmental protection, climate change, global inequalities and innovation. Organized by Symbiosis Law School Pune, a constituent of Symbiosis International Deemed University, in association with Symbiosis Law School Noida, Symbiosis Law School Hyderabad, and Symbiosis Law School Nagpur. Honorable Professor Dr. S.P. Majumdar Sir, Chancellor, Symbiosis International University, Professor Dr. Shashikala Gurpur Ma'am, Director, Symbiosis Law School Pune, Dean Faculty of Law, Symbiosis International Deemed University, various dignitaries, faculty members, participants, and students. For those of you who've been a part of Symrolic 2022, this ceremony marks the culmination of a two-day international conference that encompassed a plenary session, 6 tracks, 2 workshops, inclusive of topics ranging from various issues in climate change, suggesting dire need of policy consideration for a futuristic, sustainable country and the world. Symrolic brings the Faculty of Law, SIU's own imprint in the world of legal research. We here at the Symbiosis Law School, through such academic discourses, intend to bring eminent stakeholders on board, engage, probe, and deliberate on critical issues, and provide extensively researched recommendations. For law, when it stands still, calls for an academic probe. As quoted by our director, Professor Dr. Shashikala Gurpur Ma'am, quality research is the hallmark of excellence in 21st century, and that every research of SLS should get international recognition. With that, I now take this opportunity to invite Dr. Shashikala Gurpur Ma'am, Fulbright Scholar, Jean Monnet Chair, Professor, Director, Symbiosis Law School, Dean, Faculty of Law, SIU, and the convener of Symrolic 2022 to kindly deliver a summary of the two-day conference and concluding remarks. A hearty welcome to you, ma'am. Over to you, ma'am.
Good evening, one and all, especially the co-convener, Dr. Bindu Ronald, the deputy directors, Dr. Mohanty and Dr. Zadav sir, and all the esteemed speakers, esteemed participants and students in particular. I know that you are more than 200 in number, and we have had a very enriching track experience, more than 7, I mean almost 8 tracks as it was already told. Now we have seen that in setting the stage for the conference, we have had the global perspective, we have had the comparative perspective, we have had the interdisciplinary perspective in the plenary sessions yesterday, where we had a perspective coming from United Nations emphasizing on how poor the current climate change and temperature reduction or global warming reduction agenda is, and then how it is an arduous task in terms of containing human suffering. We also saw how people like Ambassador Manjeev Singh said about best practices coming from European experience, which is worth emulating. And European Union has always been on the side of Global South in opinion making at the international negotiation processes as well. Now, we also saw that yesterday in these workshops, specific skills were imparted. So, for example, the skill that Professor Maria Stoicheva was transferring was the skill about Q statement, which could be used in terms of understanding the perception about judgment as a research exercise, or it could be understanding the perception about a legislation, or it could be understanding the perception about current Ukraine crisis. So this is how we could use Q statement as a qualitative research tool in order to bring stakeholder perception on the doctrinal conclusions that we draw from literature review. So every student can make use of it in their term paper, in their class assignment, or every PhD scholar or LLM student can do it for their expected publication before they finally submit. Now, aside from that, we have had workshop coming from Manisha Gore, which was looking more in terms of ethics and other dimensions, qualitative research once again. And we have had the tracks. The experience at the tracks must have been very, very interesting. I could not attend all of it because of the competing other commitment. But we saw that in these tracks, there were eminent speakers who came from Europe, from South Africa, and also from various prestigious research bodies and universities of India. And these scholars have given their own long-term, well-researched data and conclusions. And then there were presentations which they were evaluating. People like Professor Subramanya, for example, who have been authorities on transboundary what we call as hazardous substances transfer in the transboundary context, ranging from that expertise to the expertise in a specific climate change area, energy area. We have had deliberations coming in the tracks. Now in the tracks, even the presentations, even though they came from young students, these presentations seem to be focusing on intersectionality of issues of investment, issues of energy, issues of biodiversity, issues of intellectual property rights, artificial intelligence. We have had Dr. Pawan Duggal, who is an authority at the national level, speaking on the issue yesterday. Now, these issues have been raising the curiosity of our students. Now, that's the most enriching phenomenon to see, that students are co-authoring with the teachers, and few students are coming together and co-authoring. Some professors from other institutes have come together, and our own Symbiosis Law School family has produced many papers in the tracks. So it is very, very heartening to see that the quality of the conference jump to altogether an unimaginable level. Now that is possible, that has been possible because of the effective leadership at subcommittee level by people like Professor Arya, who are passionate about environmental causes, people like Dr. Zadav, who is a specialist like Dr. Arya, and then Dr. Bindu Runal's leadership. So I congratulate them. I commend their work in working out the details and not having any hiccup, any inconvenience, any aberration throughout the process of these 2 days. And I'm also happy to put on record that we have done a great job in terms of roping in great scholars like Professor Srijit of Jindal, the Dean, and let us say Daniela from the Catania University, among others, and our long-lasting friendship with the Jagiellonia University, with its European Professor Tachik, among others, and Professor Henrico Radley from South Africa, giving how South African best practices in constitutional guarantees on climate change and environmental rights could be the way forward. Now, this shows that we have gone from strength to strength from our last 9 conferences, last 4 conferences in particular, which were in the brightness of our strong European collaborations, and then how this topic of climate change, which is assuming importance as days pass by, is not going to be a dying cause or a dying issue. So it has shown that through these deliberations from people like, various people from other parts of the world, from within India, the research, that our Jean Monnet chair aspiration, the objective in terms of touching upon community awareness, creating that kind of consciousness in the youth, and impacting policy governance and commitment, creating a commitment in future leaders, aside from giving them strength to give amendment to the law, support the amendment to the law, bring about public opinion to change the law wherever it is inadequate or missing. That mission also we are going to fulfill, and this conference has had a strong synergy with that. Another synergy we had was with Sustainable Development Goals. Many presenters highlighted it, particularly from the United Nations side. The Permanent Representative Justice Perez emphasized it in terms of its human suffering missing there in terms of attention. So synergy has already been told by me yesterday also in my commencement remarks, but it has been further highlighted in all the tracks in the presentations. Now, our presentations and track designing has been very much in synergy with the university's own multidisciplinary approach, interdisciplinary approach that new education policy has been talking about, center staging research as important hallmark of a law school, which has already been recognized for such quality research and researchers, home to great researchers. And another significant comment I can make in terms of my observation on this valedictory diocese, that the new areas which university has picked up has resonated with the law scholars, and policy dimensions also have been brought about, like artificial intelligence is a very strong forte with specialized program emerging in a technology institute. And there has been a specialist speaker, there have been papers from AI point of view, which is going to play a very important role in remote sensing, in conservation, and in speeding up the process of climate change mitigation. So from all these point of view, I think it has been a very successful conference. It has been impactful conference. If we look at the parameters of number of papers, quality of papers, distribution between teachers and students, cascading it across all the institutes in India and across the globe, web presence and subscribership, number of people who attended the conference and contributed, and the quality of discourse which came about in touching upon the most recent conference of parties in Glasgow, to mention a few, clearly indicate that this conference has attained its target or key result area or deliverable. So the next deliverable, which is the most important one for the time to come before we come to the next conference, which we should have done now, to show how an audit of how our last conference produced Scopus articles, or we published a special issue of the journal that we didn't present in front of our viewers in the inaugural. So I hope next conference will have the audit of this conference in terms of how many papers resulted in publication. And among them, how many were in Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4 journals. So I hope this kind of audit will come about. With that optimistic note and commendation and congratulations to participants. Some of you may emerge as winners today, but rest of you are also winners because you took the challenge of creating knowledge and presenting it in this prestigious conference. I thank you all for making us feel proud as well as fulfilled, that sense of fulfillment in our endeavor, and the hard work that entire team, ranging from deputy director to the youngest researchers, that put in has attained its target. Welcome one and all, and thank you one and all.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for summarizing highlights of the conference. Academic orientations like these could not be possible without your leadership, guidance, and support. Thank you, ma'am. We now move to the segment of result declaration. And I'd once again for this request Professor Dr. Shashikala Gurpur ma'am to kindly announce track-wise winners of paper presentations. Ma'am, please, we'll just give you a little trouble again.
Thank
Over
you.
to
And I want the slide to be there because with the equipment,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes, ma'am, we're just processing it.
Dear one and all and organizers, thank you for giving me the privilege of announcing.
Sir, can you please pause?
Law and Human Behavior, Astra Bhagat Rangoli, Institute of Law, Nirma University, and current scenario from Maran. So I congratulate the authors. It would be nice to know the theme if we are able to see.
Ma'am, it's law and human behavior with the focal area being legal system and stakeholder behavior with respect to law and human behavior.
Law and mediation.
Track 1 of the theme.
Yeah, track
We'll
one
just-
theme I announced, but law and environmental protection. Okay, very good. Human behavior in terms of environmental protection, is it? What did they write? Their theme. Yeah, if it is not there, it's okay, but it would be a matter of pride, and also other competitors will know which theme was picked up, because even picking the theme is the innovation. Let's go to the next awardee. Congratulations to the winners.
And if I may just join the presenters who won this track 1, they had presented on pastoralists of Gujarat offering adaptation strategy for dealing with climate change leading to sustainable development.
Wonderful. See, it's a field-based study. That's why it won the award. Thank you. Let's go to the next track. The next track has got a student, Ms. Sunaina Sharma of SLS Pune, co-authoring with the faculty Professor Lasya Vakaranam in the track of international law policy and governance with the focal area of climate change, international migration and global inequalities, which is our thrust area in our research. So could we have the title of the paper, please, Dr. Bindu Ronald?
Yes, ma'am. My paper was on navigating the seas of climate change in the decade of climate action and support, the international shipping industry response to COP26.
Shipping industry, yes. So there will be case studies across the world in shipbreaking. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Let's go to the next track. Congratulations to both Sunaina and Professor Lasya. Great work. The third track is EU climate justice law, governance, management, and policy. And here we were looking at climate change cascading to community and corporate compliance from sustainability point of view. So Roshni Shinde, student SLSP, and our assistant professor Shubham Shandilya have co-authored this paper. Hearty congratulations, and may Dr. Bindu let us know the exact title of the paper, madam?
Yes, ma'am. The title of the paper was a critical analysis of the impact of the green initiatives undertaken by European Union on its trade relations with India.
Wonderful. Thank you. Let's go to the fourth track, please. The fourth track has been on business, trade, commerce, management, and law, with the focal area of business, global climate change, sustainable development, and e-commerce. So the award has gone in favor of a single authored paper by a student of SLS Pune, Soumya Dwivedi. Soumya, congratulations.
And the title of the paper was The Internet, Business, Environment, and Law, an intersection of these areas for a better world.
Wonderful. Thank you. It's very interesting to see how they pick the topics, all the students. We go to the track 5, Innovation, Science, Technology, and Law, where the focal area was artificial intelligence, data science, law, technology, 21st century teach skills, green technology, and alternative energy. So the awardees are once again a single authored paper by a student of Symbiosis Law School, Pune, Fatima Luna Wadawala. So congratulations, Fatima. And Dr. Bindu ma'am, please reveal the theme of the paper.
The theme of the paper was Drone Rules 2021, facilitating an increase in drone usage in the commercial sector.
Wonderful. So it's about drone technology, which is the latest. Thank you, ma'am. Drone technology is also looked at as a solution to climate change because of reducing the land surface traffic. Good one. Let's go to the sixth track. The sixth track is on public law, society, and governance, with the focal area of role of state, constitutionalism, governance, and environment. And the winner is a team of 2 authors, Arpan Saimer Swaroop and Kirti Bhatia. Both are students of Symbiosis Law School, Pune. Hearty congrats, Arpan and Kriti. Dr. Bindu ma'am, please announce the topic.
The topic was Obesity as a Sustainable Development Crisis, Formulating Legislative Solutions for the Indian Context.
Thank you. Let's go to the last track, I think. Last, right?
That was the last one.
That was the last one. Okay. Thank you so much. And it's my privilege to announce these, but the hard work has gone in terms of maintaining quality as well, with neutral panelists and first level and second level elimination, and the track panel evaluating further the presentations. At 3 levels, this evaluation has been done and the winners have been identified. But it must have been really an arduous task, because I have always seen how hair splitting is the marks between the awardee and the next person. So all of you, I congratulate the awardees in particular, and let's go ahead to see them published in very standard journals and keep our research agenda high. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for taking out time from your busy schedule and being with us here for valedictory and then declaration of track-wise results also.
You're muted, ma'am.
Ma'am, just a second.
So can I remain muted and video can be switched off by me? Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Can I mute my mic and switch off the video? Is that permitted? Because my role is over, right? So I'll be participating remotely. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Yes, Bindu ma'am, can we just move forward with vote of thanks?
Yes, please.
Yes. Okay, ma'am. Thank you. Congratulations to all the winners and participants. We thank you for being part of Symrolic 2022, and we hopefully in the next conference, we wish to see you in person for the next one. I'd now like to invite Dr. Dhanaji Jadhav, Associate Professor, Deputy Director, Symbiosis Law School, Pune, for delivering the formal vote of thanks. Over to you, sir.
Hello, am I audible to you?
Yes, sir, you're audible, sir, but your video is not visible yet. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Very good afternoon, sir.
Very good afternoon. First of all, I thanks on behalf of Dean SIU, Director Symbiosis Law School, Pune, to the Symbiosis Society and management for providing this opportunity and always an encouragement for conducting this kind of an academic events and intellectual discourse. The event like conference or symposium cannot be as successful without the fullest dedications, tireless efforts, and meticulous planning. To make this event successful, there was a dedicated team of faculty members was working since almost 1 month, and they were on their toes to work hard and render the best of their services to make this event successful. First of all, for that strong support, as well as for providing this platform to conduct this kind of an academic discourse, I thanks to the Symbiosis management and society. I take this opportunity to thanks Dr. S.B. Muzumdar sir for his august presence in our inaugural session of this 10th annual conference on rule of law in the context of climate change, sustainable development, Indian and global perspective. When I said that there was a dedicated team which was working effortlessly on this task, I also take this opportunity to thanks Dr. Shashikala Gurpur, who is always a pioneer and strong support system to conduct an academic event like this conference. The dedicated team of organizing committee comprising Dr. Bindu, Dr. Mohanty, Professor Richa, Shubham, and Professor Arya was there, who were working reluctantly on this organizing committee. I will also take this opportunity to thank many of those committees who were working right from registration, invitation, abstract finalization, event coordinations, press and media, PROCO, and IT team for their strong support. One of the best parameters to judge and evaluate an event is an academic enrichment. And obviously, to make this academic event more successful, there was an invitees, experts from national and international platform, those who accomplished resource person, contributed their expertise, experience, and knowledge, which really shared and enriched our knowledge as well as horizon because of their expertise, which really was an academic pleasure and enriching experience. I also thanks to the various student committees for their strong support, especially PROCO, moderator, rapporteurs, comparators, and students for making this event a grand success. Last but not least, I also thanks participants, paper presenters, and students, those who directly and indirectly help in making this event as a grand success. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for extending that heartfelt gratitude to every single contribution that has made this conference a grand success. Thank you, sir, once again. I would now request everyone to please turn on their cameras for a photograph of the